Allen Robinson coming to town. The Steelers are finalizing a trade or did finalize a trade. He's got to pass a physical, but, at this point, you can kind of interpret that that's going to happen and that everything should go smoothly. He comes to Pittsburgh on a 7th-round swap. The Steelers move back to 251. Meanwhile, they send the LA Rams 234. They take on $5 million of his $15 million guarantees this season. I mean, without even having to go too deep into what this means, and we'll dive into everything that comes with this trade, but I think just on the surface, this is a win. This is a huge win for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Omar Khan once again shows that he is not messing around as the general manager.
Absolutely. And I was kind of thinking about this last night before we got on, but has Omar Khan lost a trade yet since he's been
definitely
he's
not.
undefeated.
Has absolutely smoked them, actually.
Right. Yeah.
It hasn't even been close.
Yeah. Decisive wins too, which is pretty impressive. They haven't been, I guess
32 is a big one. Allen Robinson's a big one.
Right. He's not trading for superstars, but he has gotten so much value out of things you weren't really going to get. He is upgraded.
Yes.
But in both situations. So, yeah, I mean, credit to Omar Khan. He got a high upside player for little risk. The fact that they're only playing $5 million, like a third of his guaranteed contract, because that was in the immediate aftermath of the news breaking, everyone's like, oh, well, how much of that $10 million is going to be left for the Steelers to pay? The fact that you got it down to half of that is pretty remarkable. And you didn't, you swapped 7th-round picks, you're within
for Allen Robinson, for a guy who, in the last 2 years, dealt with injuries, didn't really have the greatest stuff. I think, what's his numbers? A little over 700 yards, 7 something, 4 touchdowns, only played 22 games. Not very impressive numbers, but this dude at one point in time was one of the best wide receivers in football. Then 4 years ago was back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons with the Chicago Bears. Still very impressive football player. I mean, he's 29 years old. He comes in here. He can play inside. He can play outside. He's a veteran presence for a guy like George Pickens and Calvin Austin and whoever they draft this season. He works well with Deontay Johnson. Kenny Pickett, definitely has to be happy about this one. The Steelers had a huge, very concerning need at wide receiver, and they took care of it in the best way possible. I mean, before the show yesterday, I was telling you that I heard that the Steelers were looking at wide receivers, and the names I mentioned to you were not Allen Robinson. They weren't even close to the caliber of Allen Robinson. So the fact that he went out there and did this for literally nothing, and on the same side of that, the LA Rams were looking to get rid of Allen Robinson to clear some cap space.
They were going to cut him. Yeah.
They were going to cut him. And they essentially, Omar Khan somehow convinced them to keep $10 million of this man's salary cap and say, yeah, that's good enough. If you guys take on $5 million, we can make it work, and basically give us nothing. Nothing at all. Wow. It was just a wow. I think the next question here is what's his role with the Pittsburgh Steelers? Where does he fit? Does he play, the inside, the outside? The biggest question is he the immediate starter, or do you continue to look for a slot guy to play with Calvin Austin? How high of a priority does wide receiver remain for the Steelers in the NFL draft?
Yeah, that was going to be my question too. I figure he's going to play on the inside, right? That's where that's where the most pressing need is. Calvin Austin, as much as I think he has potential, he hasn't proven anything. And I think you enter training camp with Allen Robinson kind of penciled in as that starter at slot receiver. That could change, obviously. But the thing I like the most is that there's such little pressure on Robinson. To me, this is different from signing. There are a lot of parallels between this signing and I guess this was a trade, but, and the Larry Ogunjobi addition. A veteran guy who had some injury history. He was productive, earlier in his career, and you're kind of banking on a track record and him staying healthy. But the difference is that there's much less pressure on Robinson to, not carry a defensive line, but to be a major contributor immediately. You can kind of afford to bring him along slowly because you have some depth. And, Steven Sims can play the slot a little bit. You got Calvin Austin, obviously. He's a weapon that...
Steven Sims is in Houston.
Oh, that's right. You don't have Steven Sims anymore. Either way, you still have Calvin Austin. You have options there. There's no immediate need to say, Allen Robinson, you need to carry this offense and you need to be a big threat immediately.
Mhm.
Um, there's some insurance against it, which I like, and I think that's a big thing. But like you said, he can kind of be a mentor for whoever they draft this year. Do you still think that they're going to draft a receiver?
I do. I think that my thought right now would be still second to like fourth round wide receiver type guy. I think a Jonathan Mingo would still very much so fit what they're looking for.
And
But
it'd be
at
a
the same
slot.
time, Mingo plays on the inside outside. He actually played a little bit of off ball tight end as well too. For a guy who runs a 4.4, it's pretty impressive. But I don't think he's the best option out there. I think there's a lot of better wide receivers in the NFL draft, but I think for what the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for, inside outside capability, big guy. But I think at the same time, the Steelers just did what they were looking for, and that was to find that big body that they were missing, that like very reliable catch and traffic type of figure, and that's who Allen Robinson is. He's he doesn't have the step anymore that he used to have. He's not going to outrun you these days. He's got coming off of a foot injury, so you got to wonder like how explosive he actually is at this point in his career. But just a dude who could line up there and you could throw it to him, and chances are he could come down with the football. That's very, very good to have if you're Kenny Pickett. But I do expect them to draft. I would say that second, like anywhere from 32, and I don't think 32 is going to be the move, but anywhere from 32 to 120 would be my expectation for them to draft a wide receiver. I will say that I don't think they're going to double dip at wide receiver anymore. I thought that was a possibility before this move, but at this point, it doesn't make any sense. And I think the best part about Allen Robinson, and it's a huge chunk of money. You're going to have to figure it out next season. But he's got 2 years left on his deal. Like he just signed the last offseason with the Rams. So if he works out, turns into a superstar, you still got Kenny Pickett on the cheap and all your guys are signed. You could bring him back for another season and say, hey, look, and now we got another group of 5 wide receivers that we very much so trust. That's huge for Kenny Pickett, and the continuity, the whole, oh, well, we're keeping Matt Canada because of this. We're keeping Mitch Trubisky because of this. Well, we'll keep Allen Robinson on a huge deal because of this, because Kenny Pickett had a great year. Like I think it's an immediate win for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, absolutely. Very little downside because even if he stinks, you're paying him $5 million, I guess. And I don't know,
$5 million for nothing. Yeah. I think the funniest part, and I don't want to bash on Steelers fans because I totally understand it at times, but when this happened, I was getting texts, just like everything. I get texts, I get DMs instantly from dozens of people that are just like, oh my God, I can't believe that the Steelers just traded for Allen Robinson. Why? And I'm like, yeah, dude, so exciting. Nobody was upset about the money. Like nobody. Everybody was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they got Allen Robinson. I'm like, dude, he's making more money than Deontay Johnson. Like, what are you talking about here? This is a terrible deal. And then the salary cap got worked out, obviously, came in at a very good number. Yeah, I think it's huge. I think what's very impressive right now, and I said this on my to-go earlier, is Omar Khan, like you said, he has not lost a trade. He has not lost a signing. Like the guy has done everything to perfection since stepping in as the general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think he realizes that the Steelers Super Bowl window is open right now. Like he's that new breed of general manager. He sees that, the NFL is very trendy and it always follows trends. And the Philadelphia Eagles were the last team to follow this trend where you have a quarterback who's young, who's on a rookie deal. You could sign a bunch of veterans around him and really bulk up the team. And as long as you bulk up that team around him, you allow him to do whatever he needs to do. I'm not saying that the Steelers are going to go win a Super Bowl. We talked about this before. I don't think they're going to go win a Super Bowl this year. But with every single move they've made, it is aligned with, well, we could go win a Super Bowl this year. Like last year, it was like, okay, plug and play, rebuild, have a good team in case Mitch Trubisky actually turns out to be something, be safe, see what you have in a lot of guys like Kevin Dotson, Dan Moore Jr., Najee, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, a lot of these guys. This year, it was Devin Bush, Robert Spillane, Ahkello Witherspoon. This year, it was, no, we're not taking any chances. We're going to bulk up this team as much as possible. We're going to have some proven commodities. And if we have the team, if we have the quarterback and we have the offense and we have the coaching staff and we have the superstars to go win a Super Bowl, the rest of this team is going to be put together to go win a Super Bowl. And again, I don't think that's going to happen, but I got to give Omar Khan a ton of credit because that guy definitely sees the vision. And I think in years past, Kevin Colbert would have been very nonchalant about putting a team together and wasting money and bringing in too many veterans. And this year it's just like, nope, this is a need. Let's go fill it. Let's get the best player we could possibly fill it. And let's just keep on going. And it's been a win after win after win for Omar Khan.
Yeah, I think they have a really nice mix of veterans on more expensive deals, but rookies also kind of being, or younger guys being the centerpiece of whatever unit they're in on cheaper deals. Like the fact that their oldest receiver is 26 outside of before the Robinson signing, their oldest receiver was 26.
Yep.
Their Najee was only 20. What's Najee?
24, 25 now, maybe.
Yeah, like this window is not going to be open in the same way that it is for very long, but they are reacting to the situation they're in, which is most of the offense is very young. The defense is more expensive. So just, I mean, the team's going to be built very similarly just in terms of like, lean on the defense, but you're allowing room for those young guys to make a leap in their, second or third years. And that's going to be the difference between missing the playoffs again or, leaping up into, I don't know. Like that's the other thing. It's like you can kind of dream a little bit more
Yes,
this year.
exactly.
And you can say, oh, well, there's a way that they could compete for the division or, make it to the conference championship game. Like those avenues are much more open now than they were last year, sort of just by time, but also through these moves that Omar Khan made.
Yeah, and time is the biggest thing in the NFL. Like there's a life cycle to the NFL. The Steelers were at the end of it. They took their time and rebuilt, and the Steelers do it better than everybody else. We already talked about that. Most teams would have struggled. There's a lot of teams that are struggling now that are still trying to get out of that rebuild stage. The Steelers did it in a season, and that season they went 9-8. So that's pretty impressive. But just like you said, like last year it was impossible to see this team having success. It was, there was a cap, and that cap was very low. And as much as people wanted to hype it up and say, oh, what if this happens? And what if this happens? You knew where the ceiling was. This year, it's like, we don't really know where that ceiling is. Like if the Steelers went on a run and somehow, like had some magical victory over the Cincinnati Bengals or the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs, like people would be losing their minds, but you'd be like, that's what they're supposed to do right now. That's where the Steelers are currently in their life cycle, is they have a second-year quarterback who hopefully turns into something great, and they have a very young team with some superstars and some up-and-coming superstars. I mean, we don't even know what we're going to get out of George Pickens this season. You don't know how much better Deontay Johnson's going to be when he has a quarterback who could actually throw him touchdowns. Pat Fryermuth's taking another year. Najee Harris has an offensive line that looks a lot better than a year ago. I mean, just like you said, there is routes to a very successful and exciting season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last year, those routes were not there. So again, shout out to Omar Khan. The dude's smoking this job, man. Like I can't wait I'm very excited to see him on Monday. We're going to the pre-draft press conference, and I don't even know if I'm going to have a question. I might just be like, hey, look do you know how good you're doing right now as a general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers? Like, do you realize how well you are at your job? So shout out Omar. I expect more wins to come in the near future.